When the rulers of this world invaded northern Europe, gold was stolen from the pagan gods and goddesses of the river Rhine. And this gold was formed into a magic ring that became known as the Ring of Dominion. And it granted power and wealth to those who owned it. Yaldabaoth, in the form of Odin, desired to have the ring for himself because it represented symbolic control over the earth. After getting the ring, the overseer and his archons used its power to create self-righteous ideologies, and they stated that their own ideas were true and good, and all others who did not share their thoughts were evil and must be destroyed. The desire to obtain the Ring of Dominion and win the favor of the overseer caused the people of the earth to fight and go to battle with each other. As the battle commenced, various cultures were wiped out and their gods and goddesses were wiped out with them. And on the earth, the Archons used political manipulation and fear to destroy any who opposed their authority. And a dark age ruled the earth as these self-righteous ideologies became dominant, and the pagan gods of life were symbolically chained to the earth for 1,500 years. And the chosen ones on earth were forced to hide their divine spark and skeptical views on those who rule. And the Aeons, traditions, and the Ring of Dominion was successfully handed to the chief ruler, and he placed it on his right ring finger, and his dominance over the earth was complete. And the overseer sat and watched as those on earth continued to go to war in his honor. And those who did not belong to the overseer's flock questioned the belief systems that represented him, and they demanded liberal freedom. As time passed, the dark age of oppressive thought covered the human divine spark, and it was forced to glow silently in the hearts and minds of those who were drawn to the secrets of the occult. And in the etheric realm, the spirit of the rebel manifested as a great titan, and he had 7 heads. The Titan was symbolic of all of the people's diversities and the nuances that are necessary for life. And the 7 heads also represented the 7 lower states of consciousness that those who aim for spiritual ascension perceive to be evil. And these states of consciousness are the natural instincts of humanity. This is shame, guilt, apathy, desire, anger, pride, and jealousy. And on the physical plane, the spirit of the enlightener manifested as a wild animal with 2 horns that were symbolic of duality. And it became known as the scapegoat. The animal was powerful enough to confidently speak up against the cult of Yaldabaoth. And it told all of the people on earth to worship the God within themselves and free themselves from oppression. And on the back of the wild animal was a woman dressed in purple and red. And she was decked out with precious jewels, and she had a chalice in her left hand, and it was full of red wine. And she became known as Babylon, the Great Mother. Because, like Babylon, the city of the past, the earth's modern cities became full of corruption and doctrines that taught compulsive hypocrisy. And the Archons, in the form of politicians and elites, lusted over her wealth and power. And hypocritically, they slept with her and drank her wine. And the Archons eventually came to hate the woman dressed in purple and red. And all of those who slept with her turned around and called her a witch, and they consumed her with fire. And the Aeons and chosen ones slowly began to rise, and they went to war with the Archons under the guise of politics, and this battle of terror and symbolic fire was called Armageddon. And during this time, Yaldabaoth held a scroll with 7 seals. And a celestial wounded lamb came out of the heavens, and Yaldabaoth handed the scroll with the 7 seals to the lamb. And this lamb opened the first seal, and the first horseman of the apocalypse came, and it was called Conquest. And he was given a bow and arrow, and he rode out into the world on a white horse. And the lamb opened the second seal, and the second horseman came, and it was called War. And it was given a large sword, and he rode out into the world on a red horse. And the lamb opened the third seal, and the third horseman came, and it was called Famine. And he was given a pair of scales, and he rode into the world on a black horse. The lamb opened the fourth seal, and the fourth horseman of the apocalypse came, and it was called Death. And he was given a sword and the power to start a plague. And he rode out into the world on a pale horse. Then the lamb opened the fifth seal, and all of the civilians got caught in the battle of Armageddon. And they submitted to the overseer, and they prayed for a redeemer. And the overseer gave the people some white robes, and they were told to wait and hope. And then the lamb opened the sixth seal, and the environment on the earth was turned black, and the moon turned blood red. And the stars appeared to fall from the sky. And then finally the lamb opened the seventh seal, and the prayers from the people on earth were released into the ether. And a battle started, and many people became disillusioned with the rulers of this world. And they broke away to unite with those who desired liberty and freedom. And the battle continued, and the rebel released the vibration of desire into the astral realm. And Yaldabaoth cried out because for the first time he felt pain. And he understood what it was that caused so many of those that he oppressed to rebel against slavery and suffering. And Yaldabaoth's heart broke. Over on the battlefield, the Archons began to lose their radiance, and the Aeons threw their carcasses into the black void of darkness to be forgotten. And the chosen ones started to grow in confidence as they opened their minds and were truly able to control their own destinies. Yaldabaoth was paralyzed with grief, and the rebel removed the ring of dominion from his right hand, and it was given back to the pagan gods and goddesses, and their wealth and land was restored. So, the first thing we need to understand is that this is obviously a made-up story that I have created from different archetypes and myths that come from around the world. And I did this to illustrate the flaws behind the ideas of or the idea of good and evil. As humans, we are all designed to want and need something. So, for example, if we take away all of this heavy religious talk, I'm watching Power at the moment, and it's a series about people who traffic illicit substances in New York, and it was created by the rapper 50 Cent. And it's built on the same ideas that show up in these religious texts, where there is some sort of hero and some sort of villain, and there is this constant battle going on. So in Power, if you don't know what it is, the main character is called Ghost, and he's a young man that just needs money to support his family. And he decides to fulfill this need by producing and selling illegal substances. And Ghost recognizes this is wrong, but he pushes this fact aside because he wants to support his family, or so he says. But the deeper reason is because he wants power, which is represented by money in this TV series. And as time goes on, Ghost wants and needs more and more money. And the only way for him to get that money is for him to fully dive into his internal shadow self. And that means leaning into the hidden side of his psyche that's more ruthless and cold, and that will do anything to get what he wants. Now, obviously, this is just an example, and all of the stories that I am telling you are just examples. And in no way am I suggesting that after you guys watch this video, you go out and do something dangerous or you harm other people or anything like that. This story is just to illustrate that these archetypes are out there all of the time, and sometimes they show up in religion and sometimes they show up in our entertainment series. Another good example of this is Breaking Bad with Walter White, who also turns to selling illicit substances for his family. The idea of royalty and rulership in something as simple as the Lion King. So these archetypes show up over and over again. In the earliest mentions of Yaldabaoth, there was never a concept of an evil god that crafted the physical world. But later on, some Gnostic groups assigned him the role of the villain who antagonized the one true God. But the Valentinians, who were the most advanced group of Gnostics, declared that anyone who believed that Yaldabaoth was only evil was narrow-minded and wrong. And they did this because they understood the concept of the original shadow. The original meaning of the shadow is a concept that helps us to explain how the physical universe was created. So we could say that the shadow, or Yaldabaoth, or the devil, or whatever you want to call it, is the blueprint rather than a craftsman or a creator. From a broad perspective, Yaldabaoth is not evil, but he is a necessary expression of the one that became limited so that it could create and experience itself. The Gnostics described it symbolically as the monad and Barbello, who were the original masculine and feminine forces of creation. They created many angels in the heavens, but they rejected Yaldabaoth because he was different. And according to the Gnostics, this initial rejection caused all of the problems that we have today. The shadow is a metaphor for the unconscious part of you. In the case of humans, we go through a memory wipe when we are born into this matrix, but we always have our intuition. And it takes a while for us to work out what our intuition is pointing to. And in a nutshell, our intuition is trying to tell us that we are eternal spiritual beings having a temporary human experience. And while we're having this temporary human experience, we have to learn about the nature of both good and evil so that we can become a master of both. So we have God, who is symbolic of the spiritual nature, and we have the devil, who is symbolic of the physical nature. And the physical nature is annoying to the spiritual nature. So most people simply label it as bad. But on a deeper level, what it's trying to do is teach us how to fulfill our greatest needs. True evil happens when an individual completely rejects their natural instincts and their innate humanity, and the guilt and pressure of this builds up inside of them, and they project all of this negativity out onto an innocent person that becomes a scapegoat. So like this video if you want me to go more into the scapegoat archetype. If you want to learn more in depth without all of the symbology and all of the other stuff, what the shadow is trying to teach us, I go into it a lot deeper and a lot more, uncensored and unfiltered on my YouTube and Patreon pages. And I've linked the details for that below. And that is the end of this video. I hope that after watching this, it's inspired you to love and accept all parts of yourself, because you are amazing and I love you so much, and I really appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next one.